In Calvin's thoughts we find a golden thread, a tapestry of faith woven in the words he said. From seeds of knowledge deep within our mind, to skies above where God's palace we find. Speaks of nature, a divine reflection clear, a mirror where God's glory does appear. In heaven's vast his wisdom brightly gleams, a royal tent where all creation dreams. Through storms and stars his sovereign hand does guide each element and instrument worldwide. In beauty small and great his art does reign, in every detail his glory does sustain. Celestial bodies, language universal, their presence makes God's message rehearseful. For Paul proclaimed creation's vivid voice, God's attributes are displayed in every leaf. So heed this chain of thought both deep and wide. In Calvin's words, God's truth does sweetly glide. From seeds of faith to heaven's grand display, in every detail, God's glory is on display. Welcome back to my Fortress of Theology. I'm Jonathan, the Cage Stage Crusader, and I am on a pilgrimage through the Institutes of the Christian Religion by John Calvin. Today I begin Book 1, Chapter 5, Section 1. If you're into this stuff, subscribe, like, share, comment, and if you suffer from anti-Calvinist derangement syndrome, write some imprecatory prayers on my behalf in the comment section. Now let's get into this. Calvin writes, since the perfection of blessedness consists in the knowledge of God, he has been pleased, in order that none might be excluded from the means of obtaining felicity, not only to deposit in our minds that seed of religion of which we have already spoken, but so to manifest his perfections in the whole structure of the universe, and daily place himself in our view, that we cannot open our eyes without being compelled to behold him. His essence, indeed, is incomprehensible, utterly transcending all human thought. On each of his works his glory is engraven in characters so bright, so distinct, and so illustrious, that none, however dull and illiterate, can plead ignorance as to their excuse. Hence, with perfect truth, the psalmist exclaims, he covereth himself with light as with a garment. Psalm 104, verse 2. As if he had said that God for the first time was arrayed in visible attire when, in the creation of the world, he displayed those glorious banners on which, to whatever side we turn, we behold his perfections visibly portrayed. In the same place, the psalmist aptly compares the expanded heavens to his royal tent and says, he layeth the beams of his chambers in the waters, maketh the clouds his chariot, and walketh upon the wings of the wind, sending forth the winds and the lightnings as his swift messengers. And because the glory of his power and wisdom is more refulgent in the firmament, it is frequently designated as his palace. And first, wherever you turn your eyes, there is no portion of the world, however minute, that does not exist at least some sparks of beauty. While it is impossible to contemplate the vast and beautiful fabric as it extends around without being overwhelmed by the immense weight of glory. Hence, the author of the Epistle to the Hebrews elegantly describes the visible worlds as images of the invisible. Hebrews 11:3. The elegant structure of the world serving as a kind of mirror in which we may behold God though otherwise invisible. For the same reason, the psalmist attributes language to celestial objects, a language which all nations understand. Psalm 19:1. Manifestation of the Godhead being too clear to escape the notice of any people, however obtuse. The Apostle Paul, stating this, still more clearly says, that which may be known of God is manifest in them, for God has shown it unto them. For the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even as eternal power and Godhead. Romans 1:20. So, in that section of Calvin's Institutes of the Christian Religion, Book 1, Chapter 5, Section 1, Calvin, as usual, is a very dense writer, and there's a lot of stuff packed in there. Calvin articulates a profound perspective on the relationship between humanity and God's self revelation. He asserts that true blessedness lies in the knowledge of God and argues that God has ingeniously embedded this knowledge within human consciousness, a concept he refers to as the seed of religion. Furthermore, Calvin contends that God's glory is not hidden, but is vividly displayed throughout the entire cosmos. Though the essence of God remains beyond human comprehension, his attributes are unmistakably evident in the beauty and complexity of the natural world. Calvin poetically describes creation as a canvas on which God has painted his perfections, and likens the heavens to his royal tent, emphasizing the grandeur of his creation, even in the minutest details of the world, from the smallest elements to the vast expanse of the universe. God's glory shines forth. The world itself becomes a mirror reflecting the divine, allowing humanity to perceive God's presence in the visible creation. This perspective, rooted in the scriptures and echoed by Calvin, stresses that the knowledge of God is attainable by observing the natural world and appreciating the intricate design, ultimately underscoring that God's existence and attributes are evident to all, leaving no room for ignorance or excuses regarding the divine. But we can see that Calvin made 13 points in total. Let's go down through each one and see how deep this actually goes. In the introduction of this section, he addresses the idea that the perfection of blessedness is rooted in the knowledge of God, and it asserts that God has made himself known to humanity in various ways. Point two, the seed of religion. Calvin mentions that God has planted a seed of religion in our minds, which he has previously discussed. Three, manifestation in the universe. God has manifested his perfections throughout the entire structure of the universe, making himself evident. Four, daily revelation. God continually presents himself before humanity through the daily display of his glory in the world. Five, an incomprehensible essence. While God's essence is beyond human comprehension, his glory is clearly visible in his works. Six, the glory in creation. The psalmist's words describe how God's glory is like a garment of light, and his perfections are displayed in the creation of the world. And we've got seven, which is uh, heavens as his tent. The psalmist likens the heavens to God's royal tent, emphasizing the grandeur and majesty of creation. 8. God's control over nature. The psalmist further describes how God controls the elements and natural phenomena, portraying them as instruments of his will. 9. Glory in the firmament. The firmament, the heavens, is where God's power and wisdom shine most brightly, referred to as his palace. 10. Beauty in every detail. Calvin notes that every part of the world, no matter how small, exhibits beauty, and the vastness of creation overwhelms with its glory. 11. The world is a mirror. The world is described as a mirror that reflects the glory of God, allowing us to perceive him, who is otherwise invisible. 12. Celestial objects and language. The psalmist attributes language to celestial objects, suggesting that their existence communicates the divine message to all nations. And 13, Paul's confirmation. The Apostle Paul reinforces this idea by stating that God's existence and attributes are evident to all through his creation, leaving no excuse for ignorance. So let's get deeper into this with the first point in this section, the introduction, where it's addressing the idea that the perfection of blessedness is rooted in the knowledge of God, and asserts that God has made himself known to humanity in various ways. Calvin's theological framework centers on the idea that true blessedness and human fulfillment are ultimately found in knowing God. He argues that God's revelation is not limited to religious instruction or sacred text, but extends to the very fabric of creation itself. Calvin's understanding of God's self revelation is rooted in the belief that God has imprinted his glory and attributes throughout the natural world. This is sometimes referred to as general revelation or natural revelation in theological terms. Calvin's perspective finds biblical support in various passages, For instance, Psalm 19, verses 1 through 4 read, Heavens declare the glory of God, and the sky above proclaims his handiwork. Day to day pours out speech, and night to night reveals knowledge. There is no speech, nor are there words whose voice is not heard. Their voice goes out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. That passage suggests that God's existence and attributes are proclaimed by the created world itself. To illustrate this concept, consider the experience of stargazing. When we gaze up at the night sky, we are captivated by the vastness and beauty of the stars and galaxies. Even though we may not fully comprehend the intricacies of astrophysics or the distances involved, we can't help but be filled with a sense of wonder and awe. This experience aligns with Kelvin's point that the natural world serves as a testament to God's grandeur and divine attributes. The order, complexity, and beauty of the universe are like a language that speaks to us about the Creator. Calvin introduces the idea that true blessedness is intricately connected to the knowledge of God. Knowledge is not confined to religious teachings alone, but is also evident through God's general revelation in the natural world. Perspective is grounded in biblical passages such as Psalm 19 and can be experienced in real life through moments of awe and wonder when we contemplate the beauty and order of creation. Point 2, the seed of religion. Calvin mentions that God has planted a seed of religion in our minds, which he has previously discussed. In this point, Calvin introduces the concept of seed of religion that God has implanted in the human mind. This idea is integral to Calvin's understanding of how humans naturally possess an inherent knowledge of God, even before formal religious instruction. Calvin's belief in the seed of religion is a foundational component of his theological framework. He asserts that God has not left humanity in a state of ignorance, but has, in a sense, sown a seed within every human being that inclines them towards the recognition of a divine presence. This innate knowledge of God is sometimes described as sensus divinitatis, or a sense of the divine. I covered this in a full breakdown when I went through chapters 1 through 4. You can find them in the playlist on my YouTube channel. It's part of what makes humans distinct from other creatures and provides a basis for their accountability before God. Calvin's idea of the seed of religion finds support in the Bible, particularly in passages that speak to the universal awareness of God. Romans 1:19 through 20 states, For what can be known about God is plain to them, because God has shown it to them, for his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world and the things that have been made. This passage suggests that God's existence and attributes are evident to all humanity. Consider the concept of morality and a shared sense of right and wrong across diverse cultures and societies. I hate that word, diverse. It should be varied cultures and societies. Change that. Yeah. Consider the concept of morality and a shared sense of right and wrong across varied cultures and societies. While specific moral codes and ethical norms may vary, there is a common recognition of fundamental moral principles such as the value of human life, the wrongness of murder, and the importance of honesty. This shared moral sense aligns with Calvin's idea of the seed of religion, a moral compass or awareness of God's moral law embedded within the human psyche. Calvin's concept of the seed of religion highlights the innate knowledge of God that he believed is present within every human being. This knowledge serves as a basis for humanity's accountability before God and is supported by biblical passages like Romans 1:19 and 20. In the real world, we can see manifestations of this innate awareness and the shared moral values and ethical principles across varied cultures and societies. Yes, we should use the word varied instead of diverse. The wokey idiots and cultural Marxists have taken the word diverse and made it into a foul slur that conveys leftist politics. Use the word varied instead. It's more accurate, less political connotation. On to the third point, manifestation in the universe. God has manifested his perfections throughout the entire structure of the universe, making himself evident. Calvin's theology underscores the idea that God's attributes and glory are not hidden, but are vividly displayed in the created order. He maintains that God has not left humanity without a witness to existence and greatness. Calvin's perspective aligns with the concept of general revelation in theology, which suggests that God reveals himself to all people through the natural world. Calvin's viewpoint finds strong biblical support in passages like the aforementioned Psalm 19, which states the heavens declare the glory of God and the sky above proclaims his handiwork. The verse reflects the idea that the universe itself bears witness to God's glory. A concrete world example of this concept is found in the intricacies of biology. When scientists study the complexity of living organisms, they encounter an astonishing level of design and order. From the microscopic workings of cells to the intricacies of ecosystems, the natural world exhibits an awe inspiring array of patterns and interdependencies. These aspects of creation, when examined closely, can lead individuals to recognize the hand of a creator who has crafted such a marvelously intricate and interconnected world. In this way, the universe itself becomes a testament to God's perfections and attributes. Calvin's assertion that God has manifested his perfections throughout the universe emphasizes the belief that the natural world serves as a clear and undelible witness of God's existence and glory. It can be seen in the intricate design and order evident in the natural world, such as the complexity of biological systems, which point to a creator. Point 4: daily revelation. God continually presents himself before humanity through the daily display of his glory in the world. Calvin's theology emphasizes that God's revelation is an ongoing and constant process. He argues that God is not distant but is actively involved in the world, manifesting his glory through the beauty, order, and complexity of creation. This perspective aligns with the understanding that God is both transcendent and immanent, meaning he is beyond human comprehension yet actively present in the world. Calvin's perspective is consistent with the biblical idea that God sustains and upholds the world. Acts 17, verse 28 states, "In him we live and move and have our being." This verse implies that God is intimately involved in the ongoing existence of all things. Consider the changing seasons as a real world example of God's daily revelation. As the Earth orbits the Sun, the transition from winter to spring, summer to fall, and so on, is marked by a series of natural events. Flowers bloom, leaves change color, and temperatures fluctuate. Changes are not random, but follow a remarkable pattern. The regularity and predictability of these seasonal shifts can be seen as evidence of God's continuous involvement in the natural world. Each day, as we experience the beauty and order of creation, we have the opportunity to recognize God's presence and his ongoing revelation in his glory. Calvin's perspective on daily revelation underscores the belief that God is actively present in the world, continually manifesting his glory through the order and beauty of creation. Perspective aligns with the biblical idea that God sustains all things and can be observed in the regularity and predictability of natural phenomena, such as the changing of the seasons. Point 5: the incomprehensible essence. While God's essence is beyond human comprehension, his glory is visible in his works. In this point, John Calvin grapples with the paradox of God's incomprehensible essence, while highlighting that his glory is unmistakably visible in his creative works. Calvin acknowledges that the very essence of God transcends human comprehension. God is infinitely beyond the grasp of the human mind. However, Calvin argues that God's glory, though originating from an incomprehensible is clearly displayed in the natural world and his works. Perspective underscores the idea that God, in his grace, allows humanity to glimpse his divine attributes through his creation, even if the fullness of his nature remains beyond our understanding. Calvin's viewpoint parallels with the biblical passages such as Isaiah 55, 8, and 9, which states, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." This passage accentuates the divine incomprehensibility, while other passages like Psalm 19:1 emphasize God's glory in creation. Consider the experience of witnessing a stunning natural phenomenon, such as being far outside of a city and the light pollution and seeing the northern lights, aurora borealis. The vivid and intricate display of colors in the night sky is a breathtaking spectacle. While we may not fully grasp the scientific intricacies that produce this phenomenon, we can marvel at its beauty and order. In this moment, we are reminded of God's glory shining through His creation, even though the essence of God's being remains beyond our intellectual reach. The northern lights serve as a tangible manifestation of the idea that God's glory is evident in His works, even if the depth of His essence eludes us. Calvin's point acknowledges the incomprehensible nature of God's essence while highlighting that His glory is clearly visible in His creative works. Perspective resonates with biblical passages emphasizing God's transcendence and His revelation in creation. Real world examples, such as witnessing the awe inspiring northern lights, illustrate how God's glory can be perceived in the beauty and order of His work, even when the fullness of His essence remains beyond human understanding. Point 6, glory in creation. The psalmist's words describe how God's glory is like a garment of light, and His perfections are displayed in the creation of the world. Calvin's theological perspective, as reflected in this point, emphasizes the idea that the natural world serves as a canvas on which God's glory and perfections are vividly portrayed. He underscores that creation itself is a testament to God's greatness and creative power. In Calvin's view, the Psalms provide eloquent expressions of these theological ideas. Calvin's perspective is supported by passages from the Psalms, such as Psalm 104, verse 2, which reads, "He that is God covers himself with light as with a garment. He stretches out the heavens like a curtain." This verse vividly portrays God's glory as being enveloped in light and His creative act of stretching out the heavens, indicating His creative power and majesty. To illustrate this point, consider a picturesque sunrise. The sun emerges on the horizon and bathes the world in warm and radiant light, illuminating everything it touches. This breathtaking display of light and color is a tangible reminder of God's glory as described in Psalm 104. The beauty and brilliance of the sunrise are a reflection of God's creative artistry, and they inspire awe and wonder in those who witness it. Just as the psalmist poetically describes God's glory as a garment of light, the sunrise serves as a real world example of how God's perfections are displayed in the creation of the world. Calvin's point underscores the idea that God's glory is likened to a radiant garment of light, and His perfections are evident in the beauty and majesty of the natural world. This perspective is rooted in the Psalms and is exemplified by awe-inspiring phenomenon of the sunrise, where the beauty of creation reflects God's creative power and glory. Point 7, heavens as His tent. The psalmist likens the heavens to God's royal tent, emphasizing the grandeur and majesty of creation. In this point, Calvin explores how the psalmist metaphorically likens the heavens to God's royal tent, accentuating the grandeur and majesty of creation. Calvin's theological perspective, as reflected in this point, emphasizes the idea that the natural world, particularly the heavens, serves as a majestic expression of God's glory and sovereignty. He draws from the Psalms to emphasize that the heavens, like a royal tent, signify the grandeur and majesty of God's creative handiwork. This perspective aligns with the notion that creation declares the greatness of its creator. Calvin's perspective is supported by the metaphorical language used in the Psalms. Psalm 104:2 states, "He," that would be God, "stretches out the heavens like a curtain." This vivid image likens the heavens to a curtain, emphasizing God's creative power and dominion over the cosmos. Psalm 19:1 also reflects a similar sentiment. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the sky above proclaims His handiwork. Imagine standing beneath a vast star-studded night sky away from city lights. The heavens stretch out in all directions, displaying an awe-inspiring array of stars, planets, and galaxies. At the moment, one can't help but feel a profound sense of smallness in the face of such cosmic grandeur. The analogy of the heavens as God's royal tent comes to life as the night sky becomes a majestic canopy, and the stars themselves appear as jewels adorning God's divine dwelling. This real world experience encapsulates the idea that the heavens, as a representation of creation, emphasize the grandeur and majesty of God's creative handiwork. Calvin's point highlights the metaphorical comparison of the heavens to God's royal tent, symbolizing the grandeur and majesty of creation. This perspective finds support in passages from the Psalms and is exemplified by the breathtaking experience of gazing upon a starry night sky, where the vastness and beauty of the heavens declares the greatness of their Creator. Point 8, God's control over nature. The psalmist further describes how God controls the elements and natural phenomena, portraying them as instruments of his will. In this point, Calvin delves into the psalmist's portrayal of God's control over the elements and his natural phenomena, highlighting them as instruments of his divine will. Calvin's theological perspective, as reflected in this point, emphasizes the sovereignty of God over all aspects of creation, including the natural world. He sees God as the ultimate orchestrator of natural phenomena and elements, using them as instruments that fulfill his divine purpose. Perspective underscores the idea that nothing in the created order operates independently of God's control. Calvin's perspective is consistent with various passages from the Psalms. For example, Psalm 135, verses 6 and 7 read, "Whatever the Lord pleases, he does in heaven and on earth, in the seas and all deeps. It is he who makes the clouds rise at the end of the earth, who makes lightnings for the rain, and brings forth the wind from the storehouses." These verses convey God's comprehensive control over natural elements and phenomena. Consider a powerful thunderstorm. Lightning streaks across the sky, followed by rolling thunder. Torrential rain pours down, and the winds howl. In such moments, one can witness the awesome forces of nature in action. However, according to Calvin's perspective, these natural phenomena are not random or chaotic, but are instruments of God's will. The thunder and lightning, the rain and the wind all operate under his divine authority. While this understanding does not diminish the scientific explanation for these events, it emphasizes the theological perspective that God exercises control over the elements and natural phenomena, using them in accordance with his divine purposes. So the whole climate change thing, yeah, it's nonsense. God's in control of the weather. He changes it as he sees fit. So no matter how many tax dollars you throw at it, and no matter how many predatory tax policies you put in place, like Canada's carbon tax, the government will never control the weather. It's all in God's sovereign control. And yeah, all the climate freakout stuff is just paranoid delusions. God's in control. You don't have to worry about it. Calvin's point underscores the portrayal of God's control over the elements and natural phenomena by the psalmist. This perspective aligns with biblical passages, emphasizing God's sovereignty over creation. Real world examples, such as the thunderstorm, illustrate the theological notion that natural events are ultimately instruments of God's will, working in harmony with this divine plan. On to point number 9, glory in the firmament. The firmament, the heavens, is where God's power and wisdom shine most brightly, referred to as his palace. In this point, Calvin elaborates on the concept that the firmament, or the heavens, serves as a place where God's power and wisdom are most brilliantly displayed, often referred to as his divine palace. Calvin's theological perspective, as reflected on in this point, emphasizes that the heavens are not just a passive backdrop to creation, but a vibrant showcase of God's majestic attributes. He views the firmament as a place where God's power and wisdom shine most brightly. The idea of the heavens as God's palace underscores the grandeur and sovereignty of God over all creation, particularly the celestial realm. Calvin's perspective aligns with the biblical passages that emphasize the heavens as a testament to God's glory and wisdom. Aforementioned Psalm 19:1, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the skies above proclaim his handiwork. This verse conveys the notion that the heavens themselves proclaim God's glory. Imagine standing on a clear night sky beneath the vast star-studded sky. The celestial canvas reveals countless stars, planets, galaxies, all operating in a harmonious order. It's as if the heavens are a grand palace adorned with brilliant jewels. The intricate dance of celestial bodies, the regularity of their orbits, and the breathtaking beauty of the night sky all point to a creator whose wisdom and power are beyond human comprehension. This real world experience captures the essence of Calvin's perspective. The firmament or the heavens serve as God's palace where his attributes are vividly displayed. Calvin's point emphasizes the notion that the firmament or the heavens is a place where God's power and wisdom are brilliantly showcased, often referred to as his divine palace. This perspective resonates with biblical passages like the aforementioned Psalm 19 and is exemplified by the awe inspiring experience of gazing upon the night sky, where the celestial realm magnificently declares God's glory and wisdom. Point number 10, beauty in every detail. Calvin notes that every part of the world, no matter how small, exhibits beauty, and the vastness of creation overwhelms with its glory. In this point, Calvin highlights the belief that every part of the world, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant, exhibits beauty, and the grandeur of creation as a whole overwhelms with its glory. Calvin's theological perspective, as reflected in this point, underscores the idea that God's creative work is marked by beauty and order on both a grand and minute scale. He believes that God's divine artistry is evident in every aspect of creation, from the vastness of the cosmos to the tiniest details of existence. This perspective emphasizes that nothing in the created world is devoid of significance or beauty in God's design. Calvin's perspective aligns with the biblical notion that God's creation is inherently good and reflects his wisdom and creativity. Genesis 1, verse 31 states, "And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good." This verse affirms the intrinsic goodness and beauty of God's creation. Consider a walk in a pristine natural setting, such as a forest or a meadow. Amidst the towering trees or the delicate wildflowers, one can find intricate patterns, vibrant colors, and a remarkable symmetry. Even at the microscopic level, the world teems with beauty, from the delicate structure of a snowflake to the intricate design of a single leaf. These examples illustrate Calvin's perspective that God's creative handiwork is characterized by beauty and order, whether on a vast or minuscule scale. The cumulative effect of such beauty in every detail of creation serves to overwhelm and inspire awe, reinforcing the belief that the created world reflects the glory of its creator. Calvin's point emphasizes the belief that every part of the world, no matter how small, is marked by beauty and order, reflecting God's divine artistry. This perspective aligns with the biblical affirmation of creation's goodness and is exemplified by the beauty found in natural settings, and even at the microscopic level, reinforcing the idea that the grandeur and beauty of creation collectively declare the glory of its creator. Point 11, world as a mirror. The world is described as a mirror that reflects the glory of God, allowing us to perceive him who is otherwise invisible. In this point, Calvin introduces the metaphor of the world as a mirror that reflects the glory of God, providing a means for us to perceive him who is otherwise invisible. Calvin's theological perspective, as reflected in this point, underscores the idea that the created world serves as a medium through which God's glory is made visible. He likens the world to a mirror that reflects God's divine attributes and perfections. This perspective emphasizes that the natural world is not merely an end in itself, but a means by which humanity can gain insight into the character and greatness of God. Calvin's perspective aligns with the biblical idea that creation declares the glory of God. Romans 1:20 states, "For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world and the things that have been made." This verse suggests that God's invisible attributes are evident through his creation, functioning as a means of perceiving the divine. Imagine standing before a clear, calm lake on a bright, sunny day. The lake's surface perfectly mirrors the surrounding landscape, the blue sky, the lush trees, and the distant mountains. In this reflection, one can perceive the beauty and grandeur of the landscape, even though the objects themselves are not physically present in the water. Similarly, according to Kelvin's perspective, the created world functions as a mirror that reflects the attributes and glory of God. Through the observation of the natural world and its beauty, we gain glimpses into the divine, allowing us to perceive God who is otherwise invisible. This real world experience illustrates the theological concept that the world serves as a reflective medium for God's glory. Calvin's point emphasizes that the belief that the world functions as a mirror, reflecting the glory of God and providing a means for humanity to perceive the divine attributes. This perspective aligns with the biblical passages such as Romans 1:20 and is exemplified by the reflection in a calm lake, illustrating how the created world serves as a medium through which we can gain insights into the character and greatness of God. Point 12, celestial objects and language. The psalmist attributes language to celestial objects, suggesting that their existence communicates the divine message to all nations. In this point, Calvin discusses how the psalmist attributes language to celestial objects, suggesting that their existence communicates a divine message to all nations. In Calvin's theological perspective, as reflected in this point, highlights the idea that celestial objects, such as stars in the heavens, play a significant role in proclaiming the glory and attributes of God. He draws from the Psalms to suggest that these objects are not silent entities, but rather convey a message that transcends language barriers. Calvin's perspective underscores the universality of God's revelation through creation, accessible to people of all nations. Calvin's perspective finds support once again in Psalm 19. There are just some passages you got to keep going back to because they're just so foundational for some things. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the sky above proclaims his handiwork. This verse conveys the idea that the celestial heavens themselves proclaim God's glory, effectively communicating his divine message to all who observe them. Now, consider a scenario where individuals from varied, not diverse, but varied, cultural and linguistic backgrounds together to witness a total solar eclipse. As the moon passes between the sun and the earth, the sky darkens and the corona of the sun becomes visible. This breathtaking phenomenon unfolds without the need for spoken words or even a written language. Instead, it is the universal spectacle that captivates and transcends language, leaving observers in awe of the grandeur of the universe. According to Calvin's perspective, this event is an example of celestial objects serving as bearers of divine messages, communicating the glory of God to all people in all nations. Calvin's point highlights the belief that celestial objects serve as the heavens and the stars, such as the heavens and the stars, are not only beautiful in themselves, but also serve as messengers, proclaiming the glory of God to the people of all nations. That perspective is rooted in biblical passages such as Psalm 19 and is exemplified by the universal appeal of celestial phenomena, which transcends language barriers and communicate a divine message to observers from varied backgrounds. Point 13, Paul's confirmation. The Apostle Paul reinforces this idea by stating that God's existence and attributes are evident to all through his creation, leaving no excuse for ignorance. In this point, John Calvin references the Apostle Paul's affirmation that God's existence and attributes are evident to all through his creation, rendering ignorance without excuse. Calvin's theological perspective, as reflected in this point, underscores the notion that God's revelation through creation is universal and accessible to all people. He draws from the writings of the Apostle Paul to emphasize that God's existence and attributes are not hidden, but are clearly seen and understood through the natural world. This perspective highlights the accountability of humanity to recognize the divine through the observation of creation. Calvin's perspective, found in such passages as Romans 1, for his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world and the things that have been made, so that people are without excuse. Paul's words affirm that God's existence and attributes are evident in the created order, leaving humanity without an excuse for ignorance. Imagine a person standing in a pristine natural environment, such as a serene forest. All around them, they witness the intricate details of plant life, the variety of species, and the harmonious ecosystem at work. In this moment, they may reflect on the delicate balance of nature and the profound beauty of creation. According to Kelvin's perspective, such experiences serve as real world confirmations of Paul's statement. The existence and attributes of God, including his creative power and wisdom, are evident through the observation of the natural world. This recognition of God's handiwork and the beauty and complexity of creation reaffirms the idea that humanity is without excuse when it comes to acknowledging the divine. Calvin's point highlights the Apostle Paul's assertion that God's existence and attributes are unmistakably evident through his creation. Perspective is grounded in biblical passages such as 120 and is exemplified by real world experiences observing the intricacies and beauty of nature, which serve as reminders of that humanity is accountable for recognizing the divine through the created world. If you're enjoying this pilgrimage I'm taking, subscribe to my channel, like, share, comment, pray for me. In the realm of faith, let's now explore a chain ran poem, wisdom to implore. From Calvin's words, the truths we will unfold. In nature's beauty, God's story is told. Blessedness and knowledge so divine, God's revelation in every sign. In creation's design, his glory is displayed. A mirror of truth in each part is conveyed. The seed of religion in minds he sowed, inherent knowledge of God bestowed. In every heart a spark does reside, guiding us his truth to coincide. The universe's structure his glory unfolds, in every facet his power it beholds. In nature's beauty his grace we receive, his daily revelation in awe we believe. Though God's essence our minds cannot attain, in his works his glory does brightly reign. In nature's tapestry his wisdom is found, a glimpse of the divine all around. A radiant garment, his glory's attire, in the world's creation a heavenly fire. His palace above the heavens declare the grandeur of God beyond compare. In every detail beauty we discern, the vastness of creation we deeply yearn. In every small part his greatness does dwell, his glory in creation a story to tell. The world's a mirror reflecting God's grace, in the heavens his presence we trace. Through the celestial objects his message unfurls, to all nations his majesty swirls. Paul's confirmation in creation's embrace, God's existence no one can efface. Evident attributes his power and might in every aspect of nature's light. In Calvin's teachings we find the way to see God's glory in night and day. Through nature's lens his truth we see, in every verse his majesty is set free. Until next time, continue to follow Jesus, who is the way.